The big name and probably the biggest story in NFL free agency this week was the shocking move of the Baltimore Ravens rescinding the trade of Maxx Crosby, who they traded for with 2 first-round picks in 2026 and 2027. Little backstory here, just pretty quick. I was at work when all of this went down. And, I made a podcast last Friday about Maxx Crosby and him potentially becoming a trade target. And he ultimately was traded to the Ravens literally that night after I shot my podcast. So I really didn't get a chance to talk about him being picked up by the Ravens. And it was on my to-do list. Well, all of that got retracted Tuesday night when I got the news, when I got back in my car from working, that they rescinded the trade because of a failed physical. And there's a whole lot of storylines been going on when it regards to this situation. Was there buyer's remorse? Was this just them screwing over the Raiders? There's a whole lot of things that we can say and a whole lot of storylines to take. But here's my takeaway. There's no other way to put this than there was foul play in this trade. Now, the Ravens didn't break no rule, but the NFL follows a code. And that is the type of rule that the Ravens ultimately broke. You traded for Maxx Crosby on Friday. Normally, and a lot of NFL beat writers, they discuss that as soon as you trade for that player, you're putting him on a flight ASAP to go get that physical done in order to get this trade up and going, accept it, everything is good. Because they were saying that was the more likely better option to do with NFL free agency starting Monday. So just in case if this were to happen and you didn't like what you saw from the physical, you can be able to rescind that trade and be able to do whatever you needed to do for free agency. But obviously, this was foul play. Why do we say this? Because Trey Hendrickson is a main factor in this. Trey Hendrickson was arguably the biggest free agent edge rusher in free agency. Many people thought he was going to be gone by day one, me included, but he wasn't. The reports were coming out that he was asking between 30 to 40 million. And a guy like Jalen Phillips, who was also an edge rusher, he ended up getting 30 million from Carolina. And as soon as I saw that, I told myself, wow, Trey Hendrickson is going to ask for more than $30 million because he's the better player. But because of his injuries to himself with the core and everything else, and his age, 31-year-old edge rusher, the odds of you getting that type of contract in comparison to Jalen Phillips, who is 25, 26, the odds is not likely. So that ended up being the case. And Trey Hendrickson, his value and people wanting to acquire him, he didn't end up being acquired till Wednesday. So the Ravens saw this and they asked themselves, would we rather have Maxx Crosby, who is 30 years old, has a knee injury, that by these medical scans stated that could get worse in the long term in like 2 to 3 years? Do we risk giving up those 2 first-round picks? And granted, there was also this report that came out that the Ravens historically have never traded first-round picks for players. In the 30 years that they've been a franchise, never did it before. This is the first time they've done it. So Eric DeCosta and everyone involved, they asked themselves that question. Do we want to give up these first-round picks or sign Trey Hendrickson for $28 million at a lower price and still get to keep our 2 first-round picks? But here's where the thick gets thin, folks, and this is what people are not understanding here. The move for Maxx Crosby was a win-now move. You're not trading for Maxx Crosby because you think in 3 years you're going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. No, you trade 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby because you believe as a franchise that you are going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. You have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. You are going to extend him to a new contract. You lose your all-pro, Pro Bowl center in free agency to Tyler Linderbaum, which we're going to talk about him later here in a second. But you still got all these key pieces, and you have Lamar Jackson, should be a 3-time MVP winner. And as long as you have him at quarterback, you were missing the pieces on defense. You already have Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith. You got some key pieces. Nate Wiggins, the cornerback. And you add Maxx Crosby to a pass rush that you really lacked last season. You thought that was your missing piece. That is why you make that trade. But what if Trey Hendrickson's price didn't get that low? Would Baltimore have still rescinded the Maxx Crosby trade? I don't think they did. I don't think they would have. If Trey Hendrickson's asking price was north of 30, 32 million, 33, 30, 34, they're not signing Trey Hendrickson. And I got to give credit where credit is due. The PR people involved in Baltimore, when they were trying to feed this report out to the media saying that the Ravens were trying to get Maxx Crosby and Trey Hendrickson. We all knew that was bull jive, but I got to give credit where credit's due. They at least tried to save themselves to some extent. But in no way, form, or capacity can we believe that they were going to spend $30 million on Maxx Crosby. That was his cap hit coming up, granted. There was a guy, Sports Track, he came out and said they could have deferred that and made his cap hit $7 million this upcoming season, whoever would have traded for him. And I imagine the Ravens could have done that. And also paid $30 million for Trey Hendrickson. There's no way that was happening. Granted, they did just do something to Lamar's contract as of yesterday to where they created like $40 million in cap space. But that's another argument for another day. But if you're the Raiders, did the Raiders get screwed? I think they absolutely did, because they had $187 million in free agency spending money, and they spent it big. They went out and got Tyler Linderbaum. They paid him a fortune. He is now the highest paid offensive line interior player in the history of the NFL. Creed Humphrey was at like $18 million, and I think Tyler Linderbaum was roughly what 26, 27, $25 million. So that was a $6 to $8 million price jump per year at his position. You got Nakobe Dean, Jaquez Walker. You got all these Quay Walker, You got all these players, Jalen Naylor, etc. But you made these moves with the idea that you thinking that Maxx Crosby was not going to be part of your roster. And you made these moves thinking that you're in this upcoming draft, you're going to draft Fernando Mendoza with the first round pick, and you're going to have the number 14 pick. So you could get another defensive player in this upcoming draft. But that ended up not being the case. Now you got Maxx Crosby. The news has already came out this week that they are going to keep the players, and they've already signed their contracts as of yesterday, so they abide by those contracts. I just don't know how they're going to manage the cap. Spytek, Brady, don't know how they're going to do it. They're in a tough spot. They just got absolutely screwed because they made this plan and outlined their free agent signings, and I'm pretty sure the upcoming NFL draft with the idea of Maxx Crosby not being there. And then you ask yourself the question, do you feel that you should still trade Maxx Crosby or keep him? If I'm the Raiders, I am still entertaining the idea of trading Maxx Crosby. But yesterday's price is not today's price. If this knee issue is as drastic as the Ravens thought it was, I do not see a scenario where anyone is going to trade 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. The risk is way more than the reward. I think they could still get 1 first-round pick and then 1 later-round pick, maybe a second. One team will be able to offer a first and second like Dallas was, or maybe like a first and a third. But the idea of getting 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby, I believe, is very much out of the door. So if you ask yourself, if you can't get that price, which if I'm the Raiders, I do not trade Maxx Crosby in no circumstances unless I do get 2 first-round picks. So it might be, in the best case scenario, that the Raiders keep him on their roster. He's a phenomenal player. He's a perennial questionable. Many people think he can be or is on the verge of being a future Hall of Famer. He's an all-pro, Pro Bowler. He's a fantastic player. He's one of the most complete edges in the NFL. But man, if you're Maxx Crosby, this is rough. Just from the idea you were loyal to this fan base and the Raiders, You made no sort of noise saying that you wanted out. Only the noise was only coming from the media, from within, on the outside sources. This never came out of your mouth in any sort of interviews or anything. You come out and post this 12-minute statement on social media thanking the Raiders organization, thanking the fans, and you're posting on social media of you at the Ravens facility and everything else. And while you were there, I don't know if he was in the building or when he was at his hotel, one way or another, they just pretty much axe you, the Ravens do. It's got to be pretty gut feeling because you think you're going to join Lamar Jackson, you have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl, and you're going back to the Raiders. Now, granted, I know he posted on his social media saying, let's freaking go, put it in PG terms. But if you're Maxx Crosby, you know the Raiders are not winning for 2 years. Because the plan for the Raiders, they were planning for the future. You draft Mendoza. Who knows? You need wide receivers. Jeremiah Smith was going to be in next year's draft, so you're going to have another high draft pick next year. But man, this situation was one of the very, very, very muddy stories in free agency this weekend. And there's so much more to say, but I'm gonna cut it that and I'm gonna leave it short there. We're gonna move on, but I'm gonna be covering this story if anything else comes out in the near future. It is reported now, as of yesterday, from Adam Schefter that there are still teams calling in about trading for Maxx Crosby, and the Raiders are listening, so they're not shutting the door on the possibility of moving on from Maxx Crosby.